Get field experience, build your network, get a master's, be passionate about the mission. If you spend any time looking for career advice in international development, you've seen some version of this list. And it's not wrong exactly, but it assumes a sector that still looks the way it did in 2015. That sector no longer exists. In 2025, massive layoffs swept through USAID, US INGOs, private implementers, and ultimately the United Nations, where the Secretary General outlined plans to eliminate 20% of positions across the entire UN Secretariat. Development job postings fell from 138,000 to 106,000 in a single year. Over 41% remaining opportunities were for temporary positions. So this video isn't going to tell you to build your network. It's going to tell you something more honest. How to build a career that actually holds together in a sector that is contracting, restructuring, and changing faster than most career advice can keep up with. Now here's the story most career advice in international development still tells. There's a linear path. You get the degree, you do the internship, you land an entry-level role, you specialize in health, in education, in livelihoods, gender, you work your way up, and maybe in 10 years you're a senior advisor or a program director. The passion that brought you in keeps you going. The credentials you accumulate open the next door. For a very narrow slice of professionals in a specific window of history, this was roughly true. But it leaves out something Malcolm Gladwell named precisely in Outliers: the compounding advantages he called concerted cultivation, the access, timing, and institutional relationships that shaped outcome long before talent entered the picture. Success requires talent combined with opportunity, and opportunity has never been randomly or equally distributed in this sector. It also leaves out the most important thing, that a career built on a credential or credential accumulation inside a linear institutional path is exactly the kind of career the current disruption is hitting hardest. Now let's look at what the evidence actually shows and name the tension it creates. The sector's structural transformation is reshaping which roles exist and where. In 2025, the opportunities that remained tended to be for local talent, business development expertise, and short-term contracts. New geographic hubs like Nigeria, Rwanda, Kenya, Morocco are creating roles that didn't exist 5 years ago. Donors are actively seeking project managers, MEL specialists, and auditors, while demand for macroeconomists and public fiscal management specialists has declined. The map has shifted. The generic advice hasn't. On how expertise actually develops, Banerjee and Duflo spent 15 years doing something most development professionals almost never do: running rigorous, small-scale tests of specific interventions before claiming what works. Their core insight applies directly to careers. Impact is far more linear than we assume. There's no evidence that big changes come from big levers. The career equivalent is not one grand credential or one transformative role. It's accumulated, deliberate experience across contexts, what researchers now call skill stacking. Professionals are increasingly defined not by a single job title, but by the reach and combination of their portfolio. Now here's the contradiction worth sitting with. The sector asks people, especially young people, especially people from the global south, to invest enormous resources getting in. Degrees, unpaid internships, volunteer placements, round after round of rejection. Entry-level postings have dropped 29% since early 2024. And once inside, the sector reproduces the very inequalities it claims to address. Gladwell's Matthew effect, where small early advantages compound into dramatically different outcomes, operates clearly in development careers. Those with institutional connections, with global mobility, with financial safety nets, and the right passport find the same doors opening repeatedly, reinforcing the myth that merit alone explains the difference. And here's why this matters beyond the ethical. If people designing development interventions have been selected by a system that privileges a specific kind of background, they will systematically underestimate contextual complexity, misread community priorities, and reproduce the accountability gaps that make projects fail. The career pipeline problem and the project failure problem are the same problem at the end. So here's how I read this. Building a career in international development ethically means being honest about the structural conditions that shaped your access and using that honesty to make better decisions about how you show up. The practitioners who build genuinely effective and durable careers here tend to share qualities that the standard advice doesn't name: intellectual honesty about what they don't know, the capacity to build real relationships across power differences, and a willingness to invest in context knowledge rather than credential accumulation. And increasingly, they approach their careers the way Banerjee and Duflo approach poverty research, not with a grand theory of how everything works, but with rigorous curiosity about what actually works here, in this context, for these people, and a commitment to let the evidence change their approach. So here's the reframe. The career advice you find online is optimized for a sector that was stable, institution-centric, and credential legible. The sector is restructuring now. What's replacing it is more distributed, more locally led, more project-based, and more dependent on practitioners who can operate across organizational types and funding models without losing their ethical grounding. Building a career in this environment isn't about finding the right linear path. It's about building the right professional architecture, one that holds together across disruption, because it's built on expertise, on adaptability of skills, on ethical clarity, and relationships that aren't contingent on institutional affiliation. The question for your career isn't which organization should I work for? It's, am I building the kind of expertise and judgment that makes me genuinely useful in a sector becoming more complex, not less? So here are 5 concrete evidence-grounded approaches. None of them appear on the standard list. 1. Stack skills across sectors deliberately, not accidentally. The development professionals most resilient right now are not those with the deepest single sector expertise. They're the ones who build combinations that are rare: data analysis and community facilitation, or financial management and locally grounded field experience. MEL methodology plus compelling communication. 70% of employers are now hiring based on skill sets rather than traditional credentials alone. Start mapping your combination, not what you know, but what specific combination of capabilities you offer that few people do. 2. Treat non-linear moves as investments, not detours. Leaders who have navigated multiple sectors and accumulated varied experience are consistently better at addressing complex challenges. A stint in the private sector or a cross-sectoral project, a pivot into a different thematic area, these are not gaps in your development career. These are assets. If you build them deliberately and narrate them fluently, the key word is deliberately. A lateral move only compounds if you're extracting transferable learning from it. 3. Build genuine contextual expertise, not credential tourism. The localization shift is real and accelerating. Local professionals are no longer limited to execution roles. They're increasingly being sought for strategic positions, for practitioners from outside the communities they work in. The professional investment that matters most is one that builds genuine proximity and contextual knowledge within it. Relationships with local civil society or language fluency, deep engagement with political economy. For practitioners from within those communities, your contextual knowledge is a strategic professional asset the sector historically undervalued and is now being compelled to reckon with. 4. Position yourself at the intersection of funding and impact. After widespread layoffs, organizations are exploring now partnerships and funding models. Roles that combine business development with program expertise are now structurally scarce, and they compound enormously. Business development, grant writing, donor engagement, and resource mobilization are no longer siloed fundraising skills. They're core organizational survival competencies. The practitioners who understand both how development programs work and how development organizations sustain themselves are in a position that the market is actively searching for. 5, invest in your ethical clarity as a professional practice, not a box to check. Positionality shifts across settings and over time. The goal is not a static declaration of identity, but an ongoing practice of asking how power is being exercised in each context you operate in. In career terms, this means consistently asking, am I the right person to lead this work or the right person to support it? Does this role allow me to amplify community voices, or does it position me as a substitute for them? These questions don't have permanent answers, but asking them consistently changes the quality of your practice and the integrity of your reputation as a professional. And here's the field question. Think about your career so far, or the career you're building. What's one move, skill, or investment you've been delaying because it doesn't fit the standard path? And what would it mean for you and for your impact if you stopped treating it as a detour? Now let's bring it all together. The sector you're building a career in is not the sector the standard advice was written for. Development job postings fell 22.5% in a single year. The hiring that exists is concentrated in local talent, business development, and short-term contracts. The linear institutional path is under structural pressure that it's not going to reverse. What this means is not that development careers are impossible to build. It means the architecture of a durable career has changed. Poor economics teaches us to test and adapt rather than commit to grand theories. Outliers reminds us that opportunity shapes outcomes as much as talent, and that understanding the structural conditions of your success is not a threat to your confidence. It's the foundation for your integrity. A career built on skill stacking, genuine contextual knowledge, deliberate non-linear moves, and ethical self-awareness is not harder than the linear credential path. In the current sector, it's more resilient. The Learning Loop Guide linked below is a tool for exactly this kind of ongoing, reflective professional development, because in a sector changing this fast, building the capacity to learn continuously is not a supplement to your career strategy, it's your career strategy. This is Beyond Social Science, where we focus on practical learning for global change makers. If you learned something new today, I'll see you in the next video.